for. Like it's like 8 to 9 years old, and this thing sounds like a fucking windmill.
Yeah, your house probably doesn't need a heater because of that stupid thing.
It's like having an oven.
Yeah.
At certain times, my office does not need a heater.
Yeah.
You're actually kind of spot on. Yeah.
That's the upstairs of my house. We got my PC office, and then my roommate, the manager of the gym's a gamer, and he's got a fucking PC that's like a audio 1 billion. Whatever your Audio Technica is, his is the 1 billionth, and his room is like 100 fucking degrees all day long. It's insane.
Kyle has
handle that.
He has a heater for the
his
for
PC is
gaming.
insane. Yeah, his PC is insane. It's a little nuclear bomb machine. I don't know anything about fucking technology. I don't know shit.
I mean, you don't need to. You can always just find a tech person and be like, yo, tell me what to get. And that's kind of what I do. But then I'm like, you know what? Is this person right? And then I do some research, and then I find some better stuff that's usually like equally as good, but half the cost.
True.
That's the big part.
But you got to get if you're going to go Xbox, that shit's like what, $600 anyways. Might as well go PC and come game with me, buddy.
The thing is, if I do a PC build, I'm still going to play on a controller.
No, me too. No, mouse and keyboard's for nerds, dude. We're fucking cool kids.
That's kind of more what I was talking about. Like mouse and keyboard.
No,
other than when you get like stunned, like, dude, it's a fucking mouse. It works on 2 axes. Like, it's much easier to get your aiming down and in.
Yeah, that shit's for nerds, dude. I grew up in the 90s. I play on a controller.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I played around a little bit with my grandson's PS5 when we were in Canada. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The controller is really cool.
The PlayStation, isn't it PlayStation exclusive? Is the new Harry Potter coming out?
Oh, I don't know.
I wouldn't. Fuck Harry Potter.
Okay, dude. Look, you get one Star Wars tat and you're just going to hate on Leviosa? Come on. Can't we love them both?
First off, I have 4 Star Wars tattoos.
Okay.
I only have 1.
I have none.
Secondly, fuck Harry Potter.
No, don't do that. I want to be your best friend. You can't do that, dude.
I can name 6 fantasy series better than Harry Potter.
All right, go. You can't fucking say that. I'm calling your ass out. Give me 6. And you can't do Star Wars. You can't do Star Wars.
Okay, then I can do 5.
Okay. All right. 5 it is.
All right, 5. Hunger Games.
Hunger Games is solid. Hunger Games is solid.
Yeah. Dune. Better.
The new one?
The book.
No, dude. You can't be a controller kid and be nerding out on books. We watch movies only. We're jocks in here.
You're such a piece of shit. Okay.
All right, no fucking Dune book. You're gonna say the Bible? We're not talking about books in here, dude.
Fine. I'm talking about a fantasy series as a whole.
Yeah, the Bible.
Blade Runner.
Okay.
Indiana Jones.
I don't. Yeah, it's like fantasy, but it's not, and it's not that good. All right.
Okay. Then we're not counting James Bond then?
No. James Bond's about as realistic as it gets. I thought I was watching Cops when I was watching it. Special edition.
Okay, then I guess my 5th one would probably have to be Fast and Furious.
Yeah, that counts.
That's total fantasy.
You don't have Lord of the Rings?
Honestly, I've never really been a Lord of the Rings fan. Fan of the books, wasn't a fan of the movies.
Really? Wow. The movies to me were.
I read The Hobbit in like the 4th grade.
Yeah.
So I really loved that. But the books, man, or the movies, like it's one of those things like I'm just watching people walk for like 6 hours.
Yeah. And beautiful landscapes.
Drop a ring into a giant, basically a volcano. Like, and then there's just this little goblin fuck following him around.
And why couldn't he just have taken one of the what are they?
Giant eagle
things like from the Shire to Mount Doom, toss that sucker in there, and it's all over.
Dude, watch it backwards.
Play the
they
theme.
Grab a ring and walk home.
Can they go jewelry shopping?
In a volcano.
Yeah.
Literally, they grab a ring and walk the fuck home.
True.
Like, yeah. I mean, and then fine. Game of Thrones.
Yeah? You don't like it?
The last couple seasons of Game of Thrones suck so many balls.
I'm saying, though, it's better than...
Oh. The Potter, dude?
The Harry Potter? Oh, no. Harry Potter is much better than that.
Dude, Harry Potter's so good. Maybe you're young, eh? How old are you?
How old do you think I am?
In my head, because whenever I find out someone's age, they get stuck there. And so, like, when I first probably found you, you're like 23. So you're probably like 24 in my brain. I know you're not.
I'm 24.
No, you're
I'm
not.
24.
That's so dumb. So Harry Potter came out when, like, I was in 4th grade.
No, I know. It came out when I was in...
Shitting yourself.
Came out, I think the first movie came out in 99.
That sounds right. Yeah, so I was like 10.
Yeah, the first movie came out in 99. It got a second release because it was initially called The Philosopher's Stone, but they made that the UK version. So in the UK, it's called The Philosopher's Stone. In the United States, it's called The Sorcerer's Stone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're a wealth of knowledge, huh?
I knew that.
I didn't know that. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, dude, just useless shit. Just 50% facts most of the time.
Yeah, that's me, dude. But who knows? We end up on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I'm fucking calling you, bro.
Dude, that's a good bet. Seriously, dude. You want to do some fucking trivia? You want to have an awesome game night? You want to get shit-faced while answering questions? I'm the fucking guy.
Sounds like a good time. Sounds like a new podcast.
Dude, I have some plans for my podcast. I'm like a year delayed now on my podcast. I had so much shit go wrong. I tried editing it myself, and then I was like, okay, I'll record straight through. But then I have all these different segments I want to do and stuff. Just like, dude, I literally want to bring my Rodecaster and a headset with me to like a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And just sit down with a random person and do that a couple times a week, and then just filter through the best shit and just put it into a podcast, and then some other stuff on top of it. But dude, I had so many issues. Every time I was editing, my computer crashed. I'd get real discouraged about what content I was putting out. I had this idea, like, I got to make everything perfect all the way through all the time. And that's just not what podcasting is. That's not what anything is.
No, it's really not, unless you're in Hollywood.
Even then.
Yeah, so I just had to I had to detach from that idea, and plus I've just been traveling so much, and now it's like, okay, I'm just going to fucking wing it.
Yeah, get an editor. I haven't watched or listened to a single podcast I've ever done.
At all? Ever?
No.
Just the clips. Just the clips.
I don't even... you send them to me. I don't listen to them. I just post them. Yeah. I hate watching myself, and then you get too critical. One, I just don't like the sound of my voice or the look on my face.
Yep, that's my biggest thing too.
Yeah, and then two, I'll be uber critical and just let it rock.
My toughest experience was after that other show ended. I started doing Less Than Obvious, and it's probably a good show. I was just so critical of it that it was very, very hard for me to edit. And I would find that I wanted to rearrange the interviews into a lot more logic. I was like NPR all of a sudden, and it made it really, really hard. I wish I was still doing that show because there was good stuff that came out of it, but it is just really hard, super hard. This show is easy because we go back to front and front to back, and there isn't anything like if you said a word that was gonna like trigger a bunch of people, I would cut it out.
Which is why we have you here.
Which is why we're live on YouTube right now.
Yeah.
So
we're here for the controversial takes.
Yeah.
I recently gotten, I wouldn't even say into some fire, but this kid on Instagram like dumped like 440 pounds on the floor from his back with kilo plates and like didn't get a spotter and all this stuff. And I commented on it and I said, well, this is retarded. And here's my thing, man. I gave up on that word. I gave up on trying to be politically correct on that word, because if we're speaking connotation and intent, nobody uses that word in reference to intellectually disabled people. I don't think so, at least.
Yeah.
I think the slang of that word has developed in a very different way. Joe Rogan talked about it on a couple of his podcasts too. He's like, he's done trying to be politically correct about that word because, and this is how I worded it, is like, if that's what comes to your head, if intellectually disabled people is what comes to your head when that word is used, like, that's your problem, not mine. That word has a very different social connotation, in my opinion. And really the only people who like really, really hate it are always people who were just like, blank social justice warriors. They're just like, they'll defend any cause of any potential like offense ever, and then they'll just fry you for it.
But why is it
outside of that?
Why is it a thing the opposite when you're talking about like people that are overweight? Like calling somebody fat is rude, but fat isn't a medical term. They want you to use the medical term.
Which is obese,
I guess.
Which is worse.
Right. Like either way, we're describing something.
Fat's a spectrum. Obese is very specific.
You could dial down a number. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, though, it's just all.
Even if you take BMI out of the equation, it's still.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I stand on any of it really, because like everyone's such a piece of shit. Like the ones that are protecting like words, they're probably more pieces of shit than people that use whatever words you don't. You know what I mean? Like you're an angel, and you're going to come after me for using one word that you dislike. Like I guarantee you're a piece of, like you don't tip your fucking waitresses, you aren't nice to, you don't hold doors for people. Like fuck you, you know, like Mr. Altruistic.
I think that the issue is that they're always fighting for somebody else. And they're always fighting for somebody else who hasn't asked people to fight for them in that way.
Yeah,
I think, you know,
which I'm behind. I'm behind, you know, protecting people that maybe don't have a voice, and when you become quote unquote public figure, or you have an audience, I think there's some responsibility behind it. 100% to lead by example and do what you think is best. Have some kind of moral guidance. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you got to be perfect. And I think intent, like Garrett said, matters way more than anything else. And then, how the world perceives like you just can't throw all these. There is a spectrum of no pun intended. There is a spectrum of like morality to it all. You know, but like there is like the N-word is like in a different league. Like that guy has such history and stuff about it, but everyone like throws all these words in the same thing. Like you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say the N-word, you can't say that. You can't, like some things have 100% should probably just be deleted. But other things like I don't know how I feel about. I don't even want to say it. You're making me nervous, Garrett. The R word. now I'm scared.
Fucking pussy.
I don't know about that word either. What I don't understand about the word pussy is most heterosexual men find pussy quite delightful, and we use it in a negative connotation.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. It's connotation, man. Intent.
Yeah, pussy's often great, I think. What do you think, pal? And you're using it, you're calling me something negative.
You know, fair enough.
That's good, right?
Fair enough. But yeah, no. Like I think I read a post once from a woman who had a son who was born Down syndrome. I mean, you can only be born Down syndrome. You know, you can't just acquire it. But she had a son who was Down syndrome, and she made a whole post about the R word and about how, you know, it only bothers her when somebody says it and then they go and they look at her. And like, oh God, did I just offend her? And it's like, well, like, what? Do you think her kid's a retard? Like that's what comes to your head. So I think that, like, again, an intent and when you use it and where you use it, just like all language, is what is the big difference maker there, in my opinion.
Yeah, the anti-argument to that, and I don't necessarily agree, is that people think you're a bad person if you speak differently depending on who you're around. But that in modern day society is just so stupid. Like if I'm giving a presentation, I got a button up on, I'm not saying fuck, but I'm here in my hoodie in my office. I'm gonna say fuck to anybody that's listening. You know, I've been in big meetings where I've said fuck as well. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like if I'm presenting at a university or there's kids, or I've talked at basketball camps with like fifth graders and stuff, I'm not gonna say that word.
Yeah.
But
I think understanding where you can use language is a kind of integral part of like human competency. You know, I think in like understanding language to a degree where you have to kind of manipulate your language based on who you're with, I think is a skill. I don't think it's the other way around. I don't talk. I mean, I'm kind of a different case. I kind of talk the same way to everybody, but for the most part, like the things that I talk about amongst friends.
Sure.
Versus what I'm talking about on a public platform like this, or even the words that I use, my actual diction, like it differs, and I think for most people it should differ. That to me makes the most sense.
So, you always impressed me as a very smart guy. What the hell is your background? Like, what? You just like grow up a smart kid and you're still a smart kid, or is there? Or what happened? What happened to you?
I mean,
who hurt you with it? Who hurt you with knowledge?
Can't be that smart, dude, if he doesn't like Leviosa.
Well,
he doesn't understand wizardry.
First and foremost, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I guess if I'm going to speak off of like experience and what people have said to me versus what I actually think of myself, yeah, I excelled in school in a very different way than typical kids. So, like in the classroom, I was always very far ahead of the other students as far as understanding and applying what we were learning. And I was always way ahead. But because of that, when I was in public schools my whole life, because of that, I never did homework. I didn't pay attention all that much. You know, I graduated high school with a 2.2 GPA, but I had an average test score of like a 97%. They allowed me to take essentially something similar to basically like a heightened version of a GED test to test into an honors diploma when I moved schools my senior year. Because I come in, I had every credit I needed to graduate outside of this school's a couple prerequisites. I had to take a couple of their prerequisite freshman classes because I moved states my senior year. And like this school was like so confused. They were just like, how do you have all of these credits? I did get pretty lucky and spent most of, between essentially 6th grade and 11th grade in a really awesome school system. But like my teachers kind of always said the same thing. You know, I actually got screamed at in the 6th grade by my English teacher, Mrs. Niemeyer. You know, I always thought this woman was very harsh to me and very mean, but it was quite the opposite. She cared a lot, but she screamed at me one day because I didn't do my homework. I was copying off a girl in the class just to have it done. And the girl told on me. And
what a snitch, dude.
I know, yeah.
Snitches get stitches in my school.
Mrs. Niemeyer called me into the other room, and she sits me down, and she starts yelling at me and screaming at me, and she says, like, you could be the valedictorian of this class if you wanted to, but you don't give a fuck. That's exactly what she said. And at that moment, I thought I was going to have, like, I really did for, like, the next year think I was going to have, like, this big change and, like, start doing my work, and I just didn't. I only ever did my writing assignments because I used to like to write, and I did my math homework. And that was really it, because I love math. And so as far as background goes, you know, as far as education goes, I only have a high school diploma. I never went to college. I never intended on taking that route. But ultimately, I'm pretty blessed with having like a near eidetic memory. So if I read something, I almost never forget it. And I have a very kind of mechanical mind. So it's very easy to apply some concepts that I learn. And then running off of that, like, to me, information about any topic, if it interests me, like it beyond interests me, you know, if it sparks an interest, it sparks a fascination. And so I will go through, I mean, I do Wikipedia dives like every day, and I'll do YouTube dives all the time. And I learn and acquire knowledge, and most of it stays. You know, you guys know that feeling you get when you like unlock a memory, you know, you're like, oh,
yeah.
I get that frequently with just random information. And I like having it because you wouldn't think this, but the most random of things can be so applicable in scenarios in your work life, in your personal life, in your social life. And I just did a really good job holding on to all of that. I wouldn't necessarily say it has as much to do with necessarily being intelligent as it does with being competent and aware. You know, my awareness, my situational awareness, my self-awareness, it's pretty through the roof. That's like I think that's a big separator. And I'm one of these people who, like, I may not be able to do the same job as you as well as you do it, but I could do like the same job as just about anybody to a pretty decent degree. You know, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type of brain. I don't necessarily think I'm an intelligent person, but I do think I'm a competent person with a wild memory, and I think that's really what it comes down to.
You know the rest of that phrase, master of none?
Yeah, it's jack of all trades, master of none, but I forget the rest.
Better than a master of one.
Better than a master of one. Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel you on that point. Because I've always kind of been the person who could do everything and never really thought that was. I didn't value it the way I should have over the course of my life, but I also think that a lot of people didn't value it of me either, because I wasn't the one expert on one particular thing.
Have any of your obsessions or wiki dives or anything led to something that you want to super follow through in? Like, obviously you're highly involved in powerlifting and strength sports and coaching and now organizing and commentating and a lot of things kind of communication and strength based. But has any other deep dive like just taken you like, man, I'm going to be a fucking woodworker for the rest of my life?
Yeah, so I did used to build furniture and do upholstery. I did that for about 5 years. And when it comes to something with wood, I can build almost anything. I'm awful at welding because I don't have a steady hand. But when it comes
who would
to
have thunk, dude? Who would have thunk with your energy levels? The steady hand is just not quite surgeon levels.
Yeah. And I've never really had an interest in most things that are like art based, outside of like acting and stand up comedy. I would say the other thing that is a big deep dive that I've, my kind of more outstanding interests. Some are history based. Like, part of me has always wanted to teach history, but just with the way society is now, like, that's not something that really interests me as much. But stand-up comedy is the big one. I mean, I legit dissect stand-up, and I've done a master class on stand-up with Judd Apatow, and I've learned so much there. And just like, I guess the mechanics of it, from the actual performer standpoint all the way to the the actual audience, like, there's just so much more that goes into that than people would ever think. Timing, tone, body language, and timing being the biggest one. Timing splits off into so many little subgroups. I think stand-up comedy is the big one. So I'm actually doing my first open mic night here in a couple of weeks.
That's sick.
I'm pretty nervous about it. I've been writing down so much for years, and I have so many stories. Like, I'm kind of like, I'm a really good storyteller. I think that's one quality I have. I'm very good at telling a story, and remembering like smaller details, intimate details, nuances to how these things took place, and I'm able to verbalize that very well. And generally speaking, that's a good attribute to have if you're going into stand-up comedy. So I don't necessarily think I'll be successful in that field, but I think it'll be something I heavily enjoy, and it'll be a nice kind of outlet to have outside of powerlifting. Powerlifting used to be the outlet, but now, between consulting and organizing and commentating and competing and training and coaching, like, my entire life is powerlifting. I mean, literally, I have 5 to 6 different revenue streams at any given point within powerlifting, and I'm pretty much working in some regard nearly every day of the week. And this in 2021, counting 2-day events as 2 separate events, I did like 30 something meets this year. And, all over the country, California, Florida, North Dakota, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Texas, just everywhere. And it for me, it'll be really nice to have a new outlet, a creative outlet. I've put a lot of work into this sport, and I'm kind of like really changing. And I do take pride in this. I'm really changing the way meet directors, athletes, and spectators are approaching the sport as a whole. But, it's now become all work. It's not that the passion is dying. It's just that the passion is shifting.
Yeah, my hot take, I don't know if I've talked to Jim about it. The only person that definitely agrees with me is Bart Kwan. Agrees 1,000,000,000%. Like that stupid saying, like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
We've definitely talked about
that.
Yeah,
it's just dog shit. Yeah, it's just dog shit. You can love powerlifting, you can have passion, but like, you're not going to just get paid just to deadlift. Like, if you just like to deadlift, like even Jamal, who's the best deadlifter on the fucking planet, if he doesn't post on Instagram, if he doesn't coach, you got to do something, and you may not enjoy the things around there. you can, and that goes for anything. Stand-up comedy. If you're the funniest fuck on the planet, but you don't book shows, you don't get a manager, you don't get a tour, you don't brand, you don't market, you don't get sponsorships, you don't do a podcast, Joe Rogan ain't paid. Like, you're not getting paid anywhere. Like, you have to do things around it to actually make money. And chances are, I guess hypothetically, if you love talking to a lawyer on the phone and you love doing taxes and you love doing comedy, maybe you could not work a day in your life. But chances are you're going to come across something that's not fun.
Yeah.
And if it is something that is fun, within time, you do something enough, there's a degree of monotony that gets attached to that thing.
For sure.
And nobody likes monotony.
Yeah, I think that for me personally, having done so much powerlifting content for so many years, it's just really hard to think about how to do it now. It would need to be reinvented. Like, we don't even do the same podcast we started doing at the end of 2018 anymore, because we have to keep pushing forward. We have to keep making it interesting for people, and people always want to, like, oh, why don't you do this kind of thing anymore? And it's like, well, I could, but I'm not as interested in it as I was before, and so I'm not bringing the same energy to it. And
particularly in fitness, like, things don't really evolve. Like a deadlift's been a deadlift.
Yeah.
It gets a little heavier, a little stronger, and maybe there's some science that maybe comes out of some small tweaks we could do to our programming methodologies every 3 years, but it's not really changing.
Yeah.
Where, like, if you even in sports, like if you're an NBA commentator, there's trades, like, at least things are fresh and the content is created for you. Shit changes every week. Like, that doesn't really happen in fitness. Which is the beauty in it, the simplicity and the basics. But talk about monotony, like the definition of it.
Yeah, for sure. I have some friends that do stand up here, and then I have a friend in Connecticut who does stand up, and he has a podcast with Lisa Lampanelli. We actually had them on the show May last year. Yeah. That's a fun show. I would give that a listen, because it's like two guys who are trying to make a name in stand up, and they're being mentored by Lisa Lampanelli, who is hysterical and profane, like profane beyond what most people can manage most of the time.
Oh yeah, Lisa Lampanelli is a fucking killer, man.
Yeah.
I got two comedy questions then. One, have you ever been on stage? Obviously, you've done podcasts and talked in front of an audience at a powerlifting meet. Have you ever been performed on stage? And then two, now you got to give us like a top 3 or top 5 favorite stand-ups.
So being on stage, I did some singing in middle school. And did pretty well before my voice really, really changed. And then I didn't really sing through that. That's kind of a phrase they have for men, is like singing through puberty. And I didn't really do that. So I kind of lost that. And I've had some ear issues. So I developed like tone problems. So I don't really sing anymore. But my senior year of high school, I had always wanted to do stage theater. I always loved it. I loved going. It's like one of my favorite things to experience. And so my senior year of high school, I got the lead role in our fall production and our spring musical, and I absolutely loved it, and I killed it. Like kind of both shows, I was like, this was a general consensus. This isn't my opinion. This was a general consensus from my fellow castmates in the audience and whatnot. I was kind of the standout both times. Actually, my first show, I had the most lines in the entire show, and I was the only cast member who didn't have a mic. Because I projected so well and I was so loud so consistently, they didn't want to put a lavalier on me. And then the spring musical, you may have heard of this. Jim, you probably have heard of this, because I know you definitely know Carol Burnett. Mike, you may.
I'm uncultured, dude, and you called it. You're right.
Yeah. Carol Burnett did quite a few stage productions and movies back in the day outside of her show. Uh-huh. And one of them, actually both of the shows we did were Carol Burnett. When they were brought to television, they were both Carol, or the silver screen, they were both Carol Burnett shows. But the second one was called Once Upon a Mattress.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard of that.
It's a satirical take of the old Princess and the Pea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's a character in it called King Sextimus. That name is very deliberate.
Right.
He's essentially an old mute pervert. And so the entire role is pantomimed. And it's not, and it is very hard to, like, I'm doing entire songs with pantomime dialogue. I'm doing entire scenes with pantomime dialogue. And it was a really, my theater director literally, like, said, as far as high school production goes, just because of the lack of experience, it's one of the hardest roles in stage theater. And dude, I fucking murdered it. I know I murdered it. It was awesome. And then as for my top 5 stand-up comedians, I'll tell you my top one, and then the next 4 are like in no particular order.
Yeah, that's fair.
So my favorite stand-up comedian is absolutely, and has been for almost 10 years, Tom Segura. I discovered Tom Segura on Pandora about 10 years ago, because Pandora does, like, there's a comedy one, and they just play bits. So 3 to 5 minute bits. And I fell in love with Tom Segura's style. After that, I would say Eddie Murphy, Bob Saget,
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Eddie Murphy, Bob Saget, Bill Burr, and I would say probably Dave Chappelle. And I know some of those are pretty basic, like between Burr, Eddie Murphy, and
but if
Chappelle.
they're good, they're fucking good, dude. If your favorite basketball player is Michael Jordan, shut the fuck up, you know? Like,
right?
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
And if there was anybody who, like, the way I do things closely resembles, as far as style, it's probably more like Burr. As far as the type of comedy and direction I have in that, I kind of try to emulate a little more of Saget and Segura. So, and ultimately finding my own style is, like, going to be the most ideal thing for me to do. And that is kind of already what I am. But, like, having an inspiration more so than necessarily emulating a person.
For sure.
Those are kind of my inspirations for how I want to be on stage. So, the biggest thing that freaks me out about it is all comedians say the same thing. You will bomb, and you have to bomb. And that freaks me out. and because I know it's going to happen. And, every time I've ever been on stage thus far, it's been a highly successful thing. So the first time I'm on stage and it's not, man, that's going to kill me. That is absolutely going to kill me.
So there's so many. I haven't done stand-up comedy, but I've been on stage more times than I can count for acting, singing, orchestra, etc., band playing, and then seminars for the last 10 years. And the truth is, I assume stand-up comedy is very similar, where sometimes it is the room. Sometimes it ain't your fault.
Yeah.
Like, you could be fucking killing, and you maybe have a dumb room. Maybe everyone's just stupid and can't pick your shit up. Or I've done, like, powerlifting seminars, and I know, like, my info's killing it. Like, I obviously try to joke and have a good time. I know I'm killing it, and then everyone's just kind of, like, snoring out there. Like, you guys you're just here for the free pizza afterwards. Like, this isn't on me right now, It still hurts. It doesn't feel good, but I think that's just part of the process in anything. It's like a deadlift day, too, right? Like, you could say the same thing to any powerlifter. Hey, man, one day you're going to show up and 80% is going to be real fucking heavy. Like, you think you're a fucking beast and you're not going to be able to pull 405 very fast. So get used to it,
I did improv for a couple of years before the pandemic, and the comedy theater that I was doing this stuff at had a big stand-up competition. And I went and watched, like, a big chunk of it, and then they brought back, like, the top 10 for the next show before they, as the final. And it was earlier in the day, and for whatever reason, nobody was nearly as funny.
Yeah.
The second day, and their sets were pretty much the same as the night before. Their delivery was pretty similar, but the crowd was just not there for it in the same way. And, like, I like to laugh loud and clap loud and stuff to sort of encourage people. A couple times I've been, like, in audience for TV shows and stuff, and I can tell if I listen back, I can tell my clapping, from other people's and stuff. So you try to be encouraging, but there's, like, almost nothing you can do.
Yeah, it's energy. It's vibrations.
Yeah, I've, like, heard a couple guys talk about it, and, like, mainly Joe and Bill and Tom. Those are, like, the 3 I listen to the most, just because they're also, like, legit kind of pioneers for modern stand-up comedy, and how comedy is going to develop over the next 20 years. and they're all like, we could do the exact same set in a different city with a different demographic, and it just doesn't go at all. And the night before, you know, I was in, you know, Tampa or whatever, and it fucking slayed.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think to me, you know, if I ever do something like that, you know, beyond just like little open mic nights and improv, because I want to do improv too, because most of my good shit is off the cuff. And, you know, so I want to do something like that. But I think that's the biggest thing for me. That's going to be like the hardest hump to get over is like, I think the first time something doesn't work, it's gonna be really hard for me not to just like scrap it, you know?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So it's that R&D process of bits, and I think I think that for me is gonna be the toughest part.
I think a thing about improv that people maybe don't get is that I found improv honestly pretty easy and never really was all that nervous going on stage because you're not going on by yourself. And so if you get in the weeds, somebody can hopefully pull you out. If you're with good people, they'll absolutely pull you out, pull you in another direction, give you something else to do in the scene. Whereas with stand-up, it's hard. You have to have a whole like Swiss Army knife of ways to get yourself out of the hole.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of starting is when you start, you know, you only start with 3 to 5 minutes.
Right.
You know, when you're talking an entire special, that's a whole different story, man. I can't imagine sitting down and writing out a 90-minute special. Like that is insane, and the entire flow to that has to be different. You know, you can't open up with your best stuff. You got to save it, but you have to keep people engaged, and there's so many things to worry about when you get to that level. But I have a lot of time, you know, before I get there, if I ever get there. And, you know, just second to that, man, I've been learning a lot about, you know, when people are setting up their kind of bit, they do a little like, just like a setup into it, and they kind of flow into it. And then they'll find out that, you know, the pre-punchline bidding is what it's killing, and then no one gets the punchline. So there's a lot of factors to consider. Really, ultimately, I'm just like a very anxious person. So like, I'm like, I want to get it right so bad. I want to do it right the first time so bad. And it's like, I just got to kind of throw that out the window and just try to own it, you know?
Yeah, it seems like definitely a profession, a hobby, an art form that you just have to do a shit ton of. Like, there's no way about it. You know, there's literally, even if you're the funniest dude ever and you can make, you know, a table of 20 people laugh at dinner, like, it's just not it until you're on stage probably 5 times a week for years, which is cool.
I've practiced so much in social situations.
Yeah.
People don't know that, but I have practiced so much, and I'm not that I'm necessarily a funny person, but I've practiced so much, and usually it works. But there's different elements to consider. A lot of these people know me personally. They know how I speak. They've kind of adapted to that style. So it's one of those things where, you know, and I'm in St. Louis, and so my first open mic night will be in St. Louis. So it's definitely going to be a type of demographic I'm not as used to. And, you know, it's not my friends. It's not people who know me. So, yeah, like, even talking about it, like, I'm getting butterflies in my stomach. I'm getting nervous, man.
So how did you, I hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So how did you encounter powerlifting? And because you have dived deep, it seems to me, into the whole thing. How did that happen, and why, and what sustained you in it?
So yeah, obviously the interest peaked first as a lifter. I talked about this a little bit on another podcast, so I'll spare some details, but I was addicted to drugs at a pretty young age. I'm one of 17 kids. You know, I have a very packed household. There was a pretty big lack of supervision.
Did you grow up with 17? All in the same house?
I mean, the most kids we ever had in the house at once, because there's age disparities, is 14.
Oh, that's a lot.
But there was never a time in my life where there weren't at least 5 of us kids in a house. At least.
Where do you sit? Where do you sit in the numbers? Are you youngish, oldish? Dead middle?
I sit right in the middle. And the majority of my older siblings are boys, and the majority of my younger siblings are girls. So I just lived a pretty unsupervised life, and I was also the middle child, and my whole family smokes, and cigarettes. So I started smoking really young. I started smoking at 10 years old, hence the like borderline stoma in my voice. And that just kept kind of rolling. By 11, I was like smoking weed and smoking K2. By 12, I was using pills. By 13, I was using heroin. And it just kind of steamrolled that way. And so I just dug myself into a kind of a hole. And honestly, I kind of left that more out of vanity than anything. I like literally looked in a mirror and it was like I hadn't seen myself in 2 years. And I never had great body image issues anyway. You know, all of my older brothers were significantly more athletic than I. I was the smallest one in my family for a long time. I was the smallest one in my school for a long time. You know, between 8th grade and freshman year, just that summer, I got 9 inches taller. You know, it was crazy. So, you know, one day I literally just like, you know, partying, doing drugs. I get sick because I did too much. You know, I had a minor overdose, and I went and like literally like just woke up, washed off, looked in the mirror, and like my skin was like not cleared. It was like kind of discolored, and you could see my ribs, and I had no muscle definition on my body, and I was very soft, and you know, I'd left sports, and I had, you know, whatever. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to stop using drugs, and then I'm going to join the football team. And so going through the withdrawal process was fucking brutal because I didn't do it medically. So it lasted longer, and the withdrawals were very hard, and I kept it to myself. And, you know, I didn't have any help during that time on my own accord. It's not that nobody would help me. It was just my own accord. I am like kind of a stubborn person in that degree. And so after I got clean, I went to 2 a.m. football practices, and I was like, this is not what I want to do. And I knew what I liked about it. And so I started my first powerlifting program as the first part of my session when I was about 16 years old.
How'd you even find that? Just through football practice, like the meatheads on the team? How'd you even know what powerlifting was?
I've actually been a fan of specifically 2 people since I was about 12 years old. And it was Dan Green and Ryan Kennelly. If you guys remember Ryan Kennelly. Of course. Mm-hmm. Because there's this crazy badass video of him bench pressing like 1060 and his eyes start to bleed. Yeah. And that was so cool to me. And multiply was the actual first interest. So at the time, there was like one program developed for raw powerlifters, and it was actually a TSA program. You know, Bryce Lewis and those guys. And this was 2013. And so I find this program, and I just start doing it. But the way I split my sessions then is I do this powerlifting work, and then I would do bodybuilding accessories, and then I would do Olympic weightlifting and CrossFit, and then I would do calisthenics. That was every session for like 3.5 years. Every single 5 times a week.
I'm tired thinking about that.
Yeah. So I got like, you know, obviously I hurt myself a bunch, like a lot, like way more than I should have. I did a couple of like local high school stuff, like just like really small charity events at gyms. And, you know, before I did my first sanctioned powerlifting meet, I had probably done, you know, 10 smaller unsanctioned events and never even recorded any of them. You know, I have none of that. And I did my first event in my first sanctioned event in like 2016. So about 6 years ago. And, you know, the following year, that summer, I became a referee and got on board with a crew in Indiana and started going them with all their meets and helping set up and whatever. And then, you know, it just kept steamrolling. I also love the sport as a spectator, which I know is not common. And
even we don't like to watch it, to be honest.
Yeah. So I would, you know, I like literally one year, I like at Bossa Bossa's 4, I just flew there to go watch the meet. And that was one of the coolest experiences of my life because I had just kind of started getting on podcasts and stuff. And I did one podcast where I just like, I was so excited. I just overshared about my life and like a lot. And I'm at this meet I'm sitting in the back. It's the amateur day of Boss of Bosses. I'm just watching the lifters, and Dan's wife, Sparkle, goes, "Hey," like I can hear her, but I didn't know what she was talking about. She's like, "Hey, Garrett." And I turn around. I'm like, "What the fuck?" And she's like, "You really got 16 siblings?" No, she said, well, actually, sorry. What she really said was, "How many brothers and sisters you got?" And I like laughed. And I was like, 16. Like, why do you know that? But when I said 16, she turned around and looked at Dan, and Dan goes, "Told you." And Dan like kind of comes over. This is just after they had the twins, and he kind of like walks over to me, rocking the twins, and he just is like very casually, very quietly, he's like, I hate podcasts, but I listen to every podcast you're on. And I was like, dude, I didn't know what to do. I read about Dan Green and Men's Health and Fitness, for fuck's sake, I have pictures on my Instagram from 2014 of a picture of me sumo deadlifting side by side with Dan Green sumo deadlifting.
A little dream board.
And like, oh yeah, and I was just like, this is like, and then dude, he took me out that night. He got me dinner. It was crazy. And then, I did the Kern one year. I was the youngest competitor at the 2018 Kern. And then every year after that, Gracie had me on in some sort of, like facilitative capacity. 1 year I just helped her set up the meet and run the meet. Another year I commentated. Another, just always doing something. And then I became a meet director, like officially a meet director. I did a couple of meets, they went super well. And just like, I started coaching when I was 16, and I coached for free till I begged people to let me coach them. And I coached for free till I was about 20 years old. And then, now it's my full-time job. And, things kept steamrolling. And I just, was fortunate enough to not have the arrogance to try to do everything alone. When it came to the event stuff, I was like, okay, this person's amazing, this person's amazing, this person's amazing. I'm going to have all of them here, and we're going to make the best event, regardless of Fed, regardless of these things. And that's how it works. And it's all worked. And so, I don't know if you guys have checked it out at all, but, check out the live stream we just did for the Hybrid Showdown 4. You have not seen a live stream like this in powerlifting ever. It's stacked. It's stacked to the roof, dude. Lifter data, multiple videographers, still cameras, running scoring, commercials, ad space, commentators, interviews, the whole thing. It's like my objective when I started this sport was to make it a sport, and it's what we've been missing. We've been missing the legitimacy, and so that is really what keeps me going in the sport. I've had to kind of take a back seat as a lifter a little bit, I didn't burn myself out, but I made some poor decisions early on in my untested career and pushed some things too hard.
Hey, this is a very PC answer, dude. What the hell are you trying to tell me?
And no. And push some things too hard. And, after a while, it's like, damn, like I have to really take a back seat. I have to take a couple years to be not as strong just to build that back up. So as of recent, the kind of fire to be a lifter has sparked again. And, I have some really big goals for my next contest, and, I'm really excited about those things. But ultimately the objective is to just kind of be the main catalyst in making this sport a real sport. And as of now, there was a lot of contributors to the visibility that the sport has. But as far as legitimizing it, it's just really me and then, a group of people who do a good job, and just kind of all of us coming together and trying to provide that for people. We want the sport to be legitimate. The thing that's missing is making it a spectatable sport.
Yeah, that's hard without a lot of editing and stuff, right? I mean, even Strongman on TV's edited the fuck out of it. That's why it's not live. Like,
right?
Yeah, it's difficult.
That's exactly why you should check out the live stream we just did.
Yeah, I watched.
Yeah, you don't have to watch too much, but like,
no, watch the whole goddamn thing, Garrett. I watched to support you, buddy.
Watch a couple lifts, listen to the commentators, watch when they do interviews, and watch some of the ad space, and you'll see like it's a very well thought out thing, and we're working on adding even more stuff in the future. You know, we want to start making, stats a little more efficient. You know, like, you go and watch my model of how I want to be, if you think of individual sports, the only individual sport that comes to your mind 99% of the time is MMA and combat sports, and so that's kind of the mold we have to follow. We just don't have as exciting of a thing to watch.
Yeah.
So, it's, doing more interviews, listing more stats, making it more ingestible. And, with that, we'll never be a UFC, but we can follow that path and marginally have some of the same successes and some of the same visibility that, something like that has. And it's been, I've been pretty active in the sport for, a little under a decade now. And being as young as I am, I have this kind of opportunity to, pick up on the mistakes of past people. And again, I'm pretty blessed with this kind of lack of ignorance where I'm willing to, change things and alter things if that's what's ultimately the best thing to do. And that's really, that's the main fuel, is just knowing I can be a big working part in making it a sport where a lifter can live off of it. There's a few people doing it now, John Hack, Yuri Belkin, Jamal a little bit, and these people really are starting to make a living, but the only way they're making a living is by winning X meet.
Yeah.
So, the objective is establishing a system where over time, it's not going to start with a lot of stuff, but over time, we can work out a way to make legitimate salaries and bonuses inside the sport. And obviously that's, it's a 20-year thing, and most people just don't have that vision. And, fortunately enough, I do. And
I feel like you never know, though. Like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, strongman and CrossFit weren't full-time gigs either. But this last weekend in Miami, same thing. Wadapalooza, number one person got $100,000. 6 years ago, Wadapalooza, they won like 5K. 10K, so things can escalate quickly. It is an uphill battle with powerlifting because visually it's just not as dynamic. Like literally, that's by definition. But I agree with you. A lot of things are possible. It just takes a community, which it sounds like I know for a fact you're deep into, and it sounds like you're building a team around you, which is huge.
That's your story's a little similar to mine in that, like, I didn't see it from the meat production standpoint. I saw it from the sort of interpersonal drama standpoint, and reality shows were huge at the point that I got into powerlifting. Is like, I think there needs to be a powerlifting reality show, and like got close a few times, and really what it came down to was where's the control, like who right. controls what content goes forward. And then YouTube exploded, and the closest that we get now really is like vlogs and stuff.
Yeah.
And not, I don't know that there's anything else that has worked in that regard.
No, but it played a big role in growing the sport too.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, absolutely. Looking back on the PowerCast years and people like Max Tuning, who and Westside Barbell, they were
Johnny
really
Candido. There's tons of names.
Yeah, they were really good for that initial visibility, and now we have superstars. Legitimately, Russell Ori is a legitimate fitness superstar who only powerlifts, and that is crazy to conceptualize.
I just saw a YouTube ad yesterday for men's hair color featuring CT Fletcher.
Oh, nice.
Blew my mind. Did not see it coming at all.
Yeah, I mean, CT, you could argue is the first powerlifting superstar.
Yeah. I think you can make that argument for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny.
I think there's a couple of guys that could be argued on, It's like, we all love to say Ed Cohn, but that's so much more niche. You have to know the sport to know him.
Yeah.
Where I would even argue, and I know this may be controversial for this podcast, but I would even argue that somebody like Mark Bell was kind of a superstar for not as much as a lifter, but
how did that happen?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, if you're talking pure powerlifting as sport, the things Jim and Mark did at Super Training, which is in this building. I don't know if you knew that, but where we are in 3rd Street is the content station of Super Training, where you probably saw little Garrett smoking a pack a day, watching Dan Green's sumo deadlift. The video was probably filmed here.
Backyard meet of the century.
Yeah, all those backyard of the meets with Stan and Dan and everything was in this facility.
That backyard meet of the century is probably one of the only old meets I still watch frequently.
Yeah, so that's our gym now. That's 3rd Street. And so, like, all that, I would agree with if you talk pure niche, because even Max Tuning, and shout out to Max, I love Max as a content creator, a businessman, and as a buddy. But, he, like, vlogged and ate at Chipotle all day and then did, like, a deadlift comp. And he's a powerlifter for sure. He's competed. But if you're talking just training sessions, yeah, it was early Super Training days for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, stand effortings, etc.
Dude, I had a life goal of getting on Mark Bell's podcast one day. It ended up being pretty, not as
you didn't do
it.
You didn't do it while we were there. That's the.
Well, actually, Jim, I'd love to tell you this.
Tell me.
You were my favorite person on.
All right, dude. Couldn't you say that for like when I wasn't here?
And you are now my favorite person probably ever. So go on.
No, truly. I think a lot of people like to look at a face, the face, and at the time, the face was kind of Mike and Mark, and I could at the time, again, awareness. I knew that without Jim there and setting those things up and doing those things, the level of production that was established there and the professionalism to it wouldn't have been there. And, your inputs were always a little more well thought out and things like that. So actually, yeah, Jim, that's actually a true thing. This isn't a brown nosing thing, man. This is
all right, dude. Well, you'll have you on for another episode. I understand what you're trying to fucking get at.
No. I was looking the other day on my Facebook, and it's like we've been Facebook friends since 2016, and like without having a lot of conversation, except every once in a while on Instagram. It's like, well, that's a thing. I made a lot of friendships during that time that had more and less amounts of actual interaction.
Yeah.
But
welcome to Mark Bell's Powercast. Silent Mike and Jim McD. That was like, I lived for hearing that. I really did.
That was an old training partner of ours' voice. Sounded fucking fake.
Yeah, that fucking guy was in town this last week and did not come and see us.
Where'd he move? He moved somewhere out there.
Indiana
or some shit.
I think he's in maybe Kansas? I don't know.
I don't know. It all kind of blurs once you get past Colorado.
Mr. Dick Lickerson.
Oh, I can be the new voice for you guys. EA Sports.
That's good. Yeah, I'll take an intro.
I saw a meme just today. It's like when she's in the bedroom waiting for him to show up and she hears EA Sports.
Yeah,
it's
busy.
In the game in the other room, so not going to happen. But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, and I hear from people kind of all the time about how big a deal all that stuff was to them back then, and we had no idea. And it wasn't really like we played around with a lot of stuff and hoping that Bigger, Stronger, Faster would make our media explode and all that shit. But it was really the podcast that pulled things together, and I would never have guessed that it would do what it did, and it created a situation for me and Mike when all that ended to not want to repeat ourselves. Because of what we'd done, but like really, everybody wants us to repeat ourselves, and so it takes a mix of those things as we go forward.
Maybe we get a guy with the last name Fear to move to Northern California.
Yeah,
we get a third podcast host.
Yeah,
and who knows where things takes us? In this beautiful strength world. Maybe some sexual tension. Maybe some wonderful conversation. Maybe a couple powerlifting meets. Who knows what the future holds when you head west, buddy?
You have an open invitation to be the third host on this show, should you decide that.
But you got to move here. You got to move here, though.
Yeah.
The reason I'm denying that invitation is because fuck California.
Dude, it's not what you think. You got to come to Northern California.
No.
You got to come to Northern California.
No, I will say Northern California was definitely a much better experience for me than Central California, but Central Coastal. But
where'd you go on the Central Coast?
Yeah.
Did you go to like Monterey or something? Let me take you on a little tour, dude. it'll change your life.
Dude, I'll take it. No, I will say my favorite spot in California is San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego's amazing. Yeah.
I love San Diego.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's hard to argue.
But yeah, as for a third podcast host, man, I kind of get talk about that every time I'm on a podcast. There's always like a weird conversation of like unofficial co-host, and I kind of love that. So I'd much rather be that like fun surprise versus people having to hear my annoying ass fucking voice every day outside of my own podcast.
Or even just doing it, dude. Like we said, like I do enjoy podcasting, but I've done it for 10 years almost. Like it's just like anything else. You start to fucking like, damn, I've had so many rounds of this thing. It becomes work. It really does become work, regardless of how much fun or the new conversations or the new news, or it really is just.
Well, this doesn't feel like work, which is why we're making this offer. So.
Yeah. Well, too, you have conversations with so many people, and you realize how many people just there's nothing to them.
Yeah, you're telling me.
And that has to be a killer.
Yeah.
I mean, those conversations have to be tough. It's just like the whole thing, along the way, you're just forcing and still getting nothing out of it. That's actually part of the reason I didn't want to do my podcast as a typical, kind of the more of the kind of direction I want to go is something in kind of similar to like what Chris D'Elia does, where it's more of like kind of social commentary from me and just kind of like a practicing of bits and just like more fuck around solo and occasionally have somebody on. My brother and I were talking about doing it together because one of my brothers has just this phenomenal public personality that would just be great, but he's a fucking flake, Shout out, Mac. I know you're going to listen to this, and we did a really awesome job recording our first episode, and then you never came back.
Nice.
So, it's one of those things where, Joe Rogan talked about that too, because he's like legitimately been podcasting for like 15 years or something, like literally since like the first podcast slot on iTunes opened up, and that's what he talked about is like it's just years of having these conversations that a lot of the times you don't particularly enjoy.
Right. Well, and if you think of him, though, compared to even what you would do in strength, like he's been in Hollywood from before his podcast. So like his guests are so curated. Mm-hmm. You just grab a random person with a big bench press. Good fucking luck. He's at least dealing with like amateur comedians at the worst, who at least have some personality to chat with. Imagine 2011 just talking to strength folk that have never talked to a microphone in their life.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, fuck.
Especially considering how fringe a lot of it was then. Back then it was very fringe.
The characters are different.
You think about Lehman, and he's like, I think about what I would do if somebody kidnapped my girlfriend. How you doing, man? You want to do a podcast with us? Like, fuck, man. That was intense for just trying to have a 30-minute conversation, bro.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. To shift gears just a little bit, going back to the live stream, I watched the deadlift flights. That's what I had time to do. But the thing that impressed me about the people I was seeing on screen is like when I was intimately involved with like being at national meets and being there with lifters and helping out and filming things and whatever, the average age was old. Like everybody was old, and that is not what's happening now. You had a few older lifters in this meet, but
yeah. What would you say, Garrett? The average age of the elite day of the hybrid was 27.
27, 28.
Yeah, that's wild. Because I would say, even. I mean, besides the little bridges and like Pete Rubish at the Backyard of the Century, like even still, average age 30, 35.
Yeah, well,
and then you go to a geared powerlifting meet, it was 35
and much older.
Yeah.
Dude, the sport now is wild.
It is.
There's a kid, you got to look him up. He's 17. His name's Liam Newell. This kid is 17 years old, like 170 pounds. This kid's about to deadlift 800 pounds, legit.
Yeah.
Stiff bar, drug tested. Like, you would never know this kid's a lifter, bro. And the average age of like the really high level competitors now is like no higher than 25.
Yeah.
And And, and now, in 2012, 2013, when I started this, dude, it was like there were some people doing the kind of daily undulating stuff, but it was fringe. Back then it was bands, chains, triples, speed days, dynamic, whatever. And like now we have an approach that, permitting you can put your ego aside, where you can have 20 years of straight competing and progressing through all 20 years.
Yeah, easily.
We think it right now is nuts, dude. 10 years from now, dude, there's going to be 10 people who've pulled 1,000 in comp. There's going to be 5 people who, there's going to be somebody who at some point squats 1,100 pounds in sleeves.
Yeah. That's not that far out, buddy. That one's real close.
Yeah, there's going to be people who are benching, 700 pounds in full power. That's happened, but it's going to be even more common. Dude, John Hack just benched 589 at like an RP 9 in a full power meet at 205.
Yeah, stupid.
He took the all-time 220 record that was just broken after like 25 years. Like 4 months later, 15 pounds under the weight class limit.
Yeah.
Like he just didn't want to finish his cut. Like literally, he just texted me. He's like, "Hey, if I go up to 220, am I still allowed to get prize money?" I said, "Yes, this isn't technically a nationals event, so you can change weight classes." He goes, "Yeah, I don't want to finish the cut." So, and then he gets the all-time world record total in bench.
Yeah.
Like for about 10 minutes, he held the all-time world record total in 3 weight classes. He held the full power deadlift in 1 and the full power bench press in 2 or 3, and like, dude, it's so nuts. Just seeing what's happening to the sport is like, the people who we saw once in a lifetime 20 years ago are now popping up every 3rd fucking week. It blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, it's just the talent pool. I mean, as the sport becomes more popular, more people know what a deadlift is, more people know what a squat is. Whether you want to say YouTube or CrossFit, it doesn't really matter. But it's just more popular to have a barbell in your hands, and it's more popular. You're going to get guys that played 1 year in the NFL, and they're 20 years old, and now they want to powerlift. And guess what? They're genetically way beyond my ass. Like, they're going to be real strong.
Yeah. Dude, like, I remember in 2014, Kevin Oak pulled 700 at Reebok Record Breakers, and the internet fucking broke.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
At 242.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't pull 700 at 198, like, no one gives a fuck.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, man. When I was 19, I squatted in the low 7s, and I benched like almost 4, and I pulled in the mid 7s, and like it was fucking insane. Now it's like okay. I mean, there's 185-pound guys. Like, dude, Russell just took 650 for 5 at 183 pounds on squat.
And his bench is finally moving. He just benched like 465. Like,
yeah, man,
stupid.
It's like, exactly what you said. People, we've been talking about this for a long time. Is because the visibility and exposure of the sport has grown, the talent pool is much, much bigger, and we're getting real athletes to do the sport, not people who burnt out in other sports in high school, you know? And it's really altering it, man. And and that's the other reason I think the potential to become more visible in a public sphere outside of powerlifting is plausible. Because ultimately that has to be the goal, is making the sport digestible for the normal person. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, but I think it's attainable.
I think an interesting thing that I've noticed lately is that like stories from Barbend end up on my Google News page, and not necessarily because I chose to have powerlifting show up on my Google News page, but it just does. Yeah. For whatever follows me around, I guess. But that's
Barbend has gotten huge.
Yeah.
Shout out my boy Jake. Jake was a big piece of that a couple of years ago, really growing that thing out. Killed it. Yeah, I mean, and weightlifting. Weightlifting mirrored powerlifting in its growth and its popularity, and we had arguably the best USA showing at the Olympics in terms of numbers and medals, I think, probably in 60 years. So, like, again, more barbells in hands. We're going to get more freaks. We're going to get a little bit more audience. It is an uphill battle, buddy. I believe in you, and I'll support you, and I'll help you. But like, I've had this conversation so many times. Like, powerlifters watch powerlifting,
right?
And so like, we can grow the sport through competition 100% and freaks 100%. But like, we got to get a lot more folks powerlifting in general if we're going to grow. Because like, my mom ain't watching it.
Yeah.
My mom may watch the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like they're you know, she knows who Peyton Manning is. It's gonna be hard. I'll tell my mom about Jamal, but she may not care. I'm sorry, buddy. Sorry, Jamal.
No, but I mean that's the thing, though, man. 15 years ago, nobody cared about MMA.
Definitely differently. Yeah, definitely differently for sure. But just the dynamics of the sport, and I don't mean to debate it by any means. Trust me, because I always come out negative because I've been in this thing for 15 years. No, because I believe in you, and I trust me. Like you know, successful or not, I've tried to grow the sport to my best of my ability, and I've tried to be positive. I've put on meets. I've spot and loaded the backyard meet of the centuries, all fucking 18 of them. I've done it all. You know, I've coached for 12 years, obviously podcasting promoted it, YouTube promoted it. It's just difficult to get people to want to watch it. It is just purely by the foundation of the sport.
I noticed this I watched Encanto a couple of days ago. I don't know if you've seen it, the new Disney.
Bits and pieces.
Okay, so like everybody in this family gets a gift from, it's all enchanted, whatever. And the person who gets to be strong is a girl. And the animators fought with everybody at Disney about making her actually muscular. And they managed to do it. It's like, well, kids don't care about muscles. Well, actually they do. And they made the character look like that. And it's getting a lot of very positive response from kids. And so like little things like that
can help.
Yeah.
I mean, we had action stars. I went back and speaking of Bart again, I was at Bart's house watching the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
With his son. Taika's 3 years old, and he's just obsessed with Spider-Man. So I was like, all right, well, we got to watch this 90s one. And that motherfucker is jacked. Every character in the 90s Spider-Man is jacked out of their mind. And Spider-Man, like, in particular, is known for not being jacked, right? Like, he's supposed to be a teenage fucking kid. And I do think all that plays in a role in people getting in the gym or wanting to be fit. But if that played such a harsh role or such a prominent role in Americans' minds, we wouldn't have 50% obesity in America.
Well, what people like and what people are willing to watch and what they're going to do to themselves are totally different, though, I think.
For sure. And you think they're going to watch boring powerlifting because they think Disney movie was entertaining? I don't know.
Powerlifting doesn't have to be boring. The main issue in visibility is that we publicize the downtime in the same manner that we publicize the lifting.
Maybe.
Powerlifting meet, there's so much downtime. It's taking that downtime and finding something else to fill it with.
To me, I think it's more the monotony and the variability within a lift. With the variability within a football play or a basketball play is 1 to a trillion, based on so many factors, right? Obviously, one being just movement of a human, and in powerlifting, it's not.
I see. I mean, I disagree there.
You can't disagree. You can't disagree. That you can disagree that it's good to watch, but you can't disagree in the variability of a play in basketball and the variability in the play of a deadlift.
Here's what I mean. I mean, like, between people doing lifts effortlessly, grinding through lifts, the way people squat, the way people move, the faces.
You just gave me two. You just gave me two. You gave me the way they move smoothly or the way they grind it. They're gonna make or miss it.
But like. The way a lift can be grinded can happen a million ways. It can be just a slow, consistent thing. It can be really shaky.
Yes.
It can be, and all of those things have a different level of appeal. I don't think we're ever going to get to a level of, especially the UFC. I mean, it's literally the most profitable sport in the world right now. But like, we're never going to get to that level. But like, the way I see it is like, we can get to the level of something like, you know, CrossFit or something like strongman. Like, strongman's actually kind of taking a dip right now, but like CrossFit is on this giant upkick, and it all comes down to how you're making it visible and how you're doing that. And with CrossFit, yes, there's constant action to a certain degree. Now it's a matter of just filling that time in between with the right content, and it's going to take a long time to figure that out. You know, ad space helped a lot, having sponsors pay for commercials. And having commentators helped a lot. But now there has to be something there's got to be more. And that's kind of what I am currently trying to curate, is just what is the more? What is the more that we fill that space with to keep people involved? And powerlifting is such a consumer sport. Like, it's like, you know, everybody knows, like 30, 20-year-old kids who have every pair of knee sleeves, every shoe, every shirt. And like, ultimately, I think what it's going to come down to is like not ultimately, but I think one big thing is like, you know, finding a way to get people to buy things in between in this downtime. And, ad space is simple, but, we're a discount code sport. We do specialized discount codes and things like that. And, there's a lot of ways to make it viewable and profitable and digestible. It's just nobody's really taken the time or the capital to do that. And
well, it's risky. I mean, if you're a big business and you can't guarantee views and you can't guarantee purchases, it's risky to throw down $100,000 at any event without a proven track record. What I would argue, and I don't know the root of it, and I've debated it in my brain and with people, is that CrossFit did an amazing job of marketing in general and gathering community across the world, and there's way more people that casually CrossFit than there are casually powerlifting, and that's just that number we probably could look up. But the similarities is that the only people that watch those sports are people that do those sports. CrossFit people that go to the CrossFit Games do CrossFit. You're not like, yeah, man, I golf and here I am at the CrossFit Games to watch whatever this is, right? You do CrossFit, right. And similar with powerlifting. Strongman, especially because of the growth with these fucking giants of Thor and Brian Shaw and kind of the literally larger than life human beings. And TV obviously plays a role, but people watch that not knowing what's going on. You could not even know like strongman is a sport, and you can watch strongman because you're seeing a giant pulley train, and you're like, oh, that's something more relatable than the regular person doesn't know what 500 pounds is.
Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the big disconnect in my head. And then visually, how do you make it? I don't know. And I agree, strongman is kind of stuttering in a sense. A lot of guys are getting injured. It's hard to build up any sport when you don't have superstars, and that's another thing CrossFit's done really well. And hopefully guys hopefully everyone stays healthy, but if guys stay healthy long term in powerlifting, that's kind of how you have to do it. You have to have people long in the game so you can build a story, so you can build a history, so you can build a superstar. The NBA, the UFC is really good at it, obviously. If it's not LeBron James versus Kevin Durant, no one's watching. Right? If you don't build up these characters, no one cares, because even in those highly dynamic sports. So if we don't have that in kind of a slower, static sport, and I know you're a chess guy, but who's watching chess? Like people that play chess probably.
Well, we're working on some of those other things. Stay tuned, Mike, because in a world where everybody doesn't powerlift, we can make everybody love powerlifting.
I hope so. Power to you.
On that note, where can people find you, man?
People can find me on Instagram at not Garrett Fear.
Does someone already have the just not?
Double negative.
I double knotted it. I did not the first time, but then people were actually confused. They thought it was a troll account. So I decided to go with the double negative. So you can find me on Instagram at not Garrett Fear. And coming in the next couple of months, you'll be able to find me on iTunes and Spotify under the Fear and Other Drugs podcast.
Nice.
Easy. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. Be sure to check out all Garrett's stuff. He's doing great work, great lifter coach, and doing good things for the sport. I'm Solid Mike. Everyone to find me. Brand new episode every single Wednesday.
I am at the Jim McD on all the social media. This show is 50% facts, where percent is a word and 50 is just numbers, and we will be back at you next week with a documentary. And hang on, Garrett. Roll the outro. We stay on long enough for everything to upload, because we were